Jaipur Rugs Company, a socio-economic network. Jaipur Rugs is a medium-scale Indian company engaged in manufacture and export of a whole range of rugs and carpets. It represents yet another example of an indigenous company which has developed a novel supply chain network harnessing the skills of widely dispersed rural Indian artisans to link the remote Indian villages with the world market and is delivering in the process good value to the customer and fair returns to the rural population. It has imbibed the spirit of corporate social responsibility into its business, and the traditional Indian values reflect in the design, planning, and operation of its supply chain. The sourcing and production base of the company cover its 8 Indian states, and the market includes USA, Australia, Canada, Greece, Germany, and Spain, besides several other countries. The production and distribution move seamlessly from thousands of looms in remote Indian villages through some of the leading retail chains to reach the consumers of quality carpets world over. With the help of this example, the following points can be discussed. In the developing world, how can small and medium scale industries leverage the power of supply chains to deliver value to the customer and simultaneously value the standard of living of the artisans? To free the artisans from exploitation and underpayment, how can the involvement of middlemen be minimized? So, with all this, now let's summarize the learning objectives. Discuss the goal of a supply chain and explain in the impact of supply chain decision on the success of a firm. The goal of a supply chain should be to grow the overall supply chain surplus. Supply chain surplus is a difference between the value generated for the customer and the total cost incurred across all the stages of the supply chain. A focus on the supply chain surplus increases the overall pie for all members of the supply chain. Supply chain decisions have a large impact on the success or failure of each firm because they significantly influence both the revenue generated and the cost incurred. Successful supply chains manage flow of product, information and funds to provide a high value of product availability to the market and customer while keeping cost low. Identify three key supply chain decision phases and explain the significance on each one. Supply chain decision may be categorized as strategic, planning, or operational depending on the time period during which they apply. Strategic decisions relate to supply chain configuration. These decisions have a long-term impact that lasts for several years. Planning decisions, however, cover a period for a few months to a year, include decisions regarding production phase, subcontracting, and promotion over the period. Operational decisions span from minutes to days and include sequencing, production, and filling specific orders. Strategic decisions define the constraint for planning decisions, and planning decisions define the constraint for operational decisions. Describe the cycle of push-pull views of a supply chain. Cycle divides process into cycles, each performed at the interface two successive stages of a supply chain. Each cycle starts with the order placed by one stage of the supply chain and ends when the order is received from other stage of a supply chain. A push-pull view of a supply chain characterizes process based on the timing relatively to the that of a customer order. Pull process are performed in response to a customer order, whereas push process are performed in anticipation of the customer orders. Classify the supply chain macro process in a firm. All supply chain process can be classified into three macro processes based on whether they are at customer or supplier interface or an internal to the firm. The CRM process consists of all the processes as interface between the firm and the customer that work to generate, receive, and track customers' orders. The ISCM macro process consists of all the supply chain processes that are internal to the firm and work to plan for and fulfill customer orders. The SRM macro process consists of all the supply chain process at the interface between the firm and its suppliers that the work to evaluate the selective suppliers and then source goods and service from the firm. Now if we have few questions, I will be giving it to you and you can just comment it down in the comment section. The first is, consider the purchase of a can of a soda at a convenience store. Describe the various stages in the supply chain and difference different flow involved, like the chemical companies will put aluminum for the soda can, and how the chemicals are coming and how the water is coming, all those things. Then from where to a distribution house, all those things. Why should a firm such as Dell take into account total supply chain profitability when making decisions? You can think of it like a overall customer experience, how much customer wants and what specific configuration customer wants, and give me the answer on the comment section. Now the third question is, what are some strategic planning and operational decisions that must be made by an apparel retailer such as Gap? You have to know about the costing card and all those things. The fourth question is, consider the supply chain involved when a customer purchases a book at a bookstore. Identify cycles in this supply chain and the location of the push pull boundary. Okay, bookstore, you have a book and which is a new book, which is an old book, something of a good author or a bad author. So this push pull you will be dependent on that also. Consider the supply chain involved when a customer orders a book from Amazon. Identify push pull boundary and to process each in the push and the pull phases. You can know that customer orders, it will go to a particular supplier or a particular inventory. There will be a distribution house, and how the push pull process view, how much like we did it in a bookstore, same thing we can do here also. Now the last question is, in what way do supply chain flows affect the success or failure of a firm such as Amazon? List two supply chain decisions that have a significant impact on the supply chain profitability. So like Amazon has to consistently check for the inventory and the delivery system because it's a door-to-door delivery. So all those things you have to make sure that you incorporate there. Tomorrow we'll be having a case study on Indian generic drug and supply chain surplus. For today, it's done.